And Erica, before the next question, I wanted to do a quick follow-up on the Social Security question.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I'm in touch with Larry Kotlikoff, and I think Larry would actually agree with what Larry Swedrow's analysis is. But here's the thing that Larry Kotlikoff said, which he is more of an expert than I, particularly on national economic issues and even Social Security itself. He said, yes, there's going to be some changes. Yes, they might, let's say, make you work later. Yes, there might be some type of reduction in what you might eventually get, but that's not the most important. And so maybe you don't want to count on Social Security, which hopefully nobody on this call is completely counting on Social Security for their income. But here's the other thing that Larry said. He said they're still going to reward people who do wait. So don't think, oh boy, they're going to change Social Security. I better take it at 62 because the whole thing's going to go bankrupt. I'm not going to get anything, so I might as well grab it now. And I know that that's a natural reaction, particularly after what Larry Swedrow just said. Larry Kotlikoff, and I would agree with him, says, yes, there's going to be changes. Yes, they're not going to be good for you, but that doesn't mean that you should necessarily take it early. In fact, we think that you're going to be rewarded more if you hold off. So I just thought I would mention that in the area of Social Security. And now I'm happy to take any other questions that we have in the queue.
Absolutely. And I believe from my reading of Larry Kotlikoff, and you'll have to let me know if this is right, Jim, but I think another thing that he said was for older retirees, it's less likely that any changes to the FRA or other changes that would impact the level of benefits that you can expect to collect would happen to them. It's more likely to happen to younger people, right?
Yes, that is right. And just to translate, FRA is full retirement age, which right now, depending on when you were born, is somewhere, I think it's 66 2/3. And what that means is that is the age that is in effect 100% of the Social Security benefit. For every year that you wait between that and age 70, you get an 8% raise in your benefit. We've mathematically shown that I think the break even mathematically is somewhere around age 82, 83. I don't think there is anything new in what Larry said or the new environment that would change that. And just finally, to quote Larry again, is even if you accept our analysis and the break even is age 82 or 83, and let's say that you're not sure of your health, you're not sure, well, gee, am I going to make it to age 82 or 83? Maybe I should just be sure to get the money. What he would say is think like an economist, don't think like an actuary. If you, and this isn't even including the benefits of a spousal benefit, but if you include that, the issue isn't if you and your spouse die early, you'll get a little bit more money if you take it early. That should not be your concern because dead people don't have financial problems. Your concern should be outliving your money if you live a long time and you are better off waiting to get that guarantee. And the, in effect, implicit interest rate in you waiting is much greater than you're going to get with any investment, including anything that we can offer. So holding off on Social Security, unless you and your spouse have a significantly reduced life expectancy, is most likely the best course of action. Okay, why don't we go to an audience-inspired question instead of mine?
Absolutely. This question from Wen Tao is about Roth conversions primarily. He asks, how do you decide whether to make a Roth conversion or harvest capital gains? I'm not sure it's always an either or, but you can sort of decide how you would like to take that. But he also asks, is it always a good idea to fill up to the tax bracket, say 22 or 24 before Social Security and RMD? So I guess he's saying, is it always a good idea to try to go to the top of your current tax bracket?
Why don't I take that one, because that's that's not a terrible rule of thumb, which is, let's say you're in the 22% tax bracket. And I forget the cutoff on it this year, but let's just say you're in the 22% tax bracket. And let's for the moment forget about the impact of the taxation on Social Security. Let's forget about the tax impact of Medicare Part B, which in reality you can't forget about. But if we did forget about that, would that be a reasonable starting point? Probably. But here's what I would say. If you ran the numbers, depending on your own personal situation, it might be that it makes more sense for somebody in the 22% bracket that to go all the way up to the top of the 24% bracket, which would put them into a higher bracket than they're paying now. And if you did long-term projections, depending on what assumptions you might make, you might find that that higher or more aggressive Roth IRA conversion will be better for you and most likely better for your family. So we have done the numbers on a lot of, for example, 22% conversion folks to have them convert a higher amount. Again, not everybody, everybody is different. That's one of the reasons why we like to run the numbers. So you actually get the mathematically correct answer, assuming that our assumptions are accurate, which of course they never are, but we give it our best shot. So that is the quick answer. Tying in tax loss harvesting, that's really a different issue. And I think rather than getting into that, I would rather move on to the next question because we don't have too much time left. So why don't we move on to the next one, Erica?
Absolutely. So there were a couple follow-ups kind of that have come in while you were answering your question. So this is like a live feedback. But Joan asked, what if you need extra money from Social Security, like taking it early to help pay for Roth conversions?
I don't like that. If you want to do, let's say that you're in a good position to do a Roth conversion, all right? Do I want to take Social Security early to do that Roth conversion? I hate to reduce your future income that you are doing when you're taking Social Security early. If you want to be risky about it and you want mathematical evidence that this risk is worth it, but it might not pass the stomach test, and let's say that, and presumably the nature of the question is that you don't have sufficient after-tax dollars to both live comfortably and to pay the taxes on a Roth IRA conversion, then the riskier strategy, but I think a much better strategy than taking Social Security early, is to take out a home equity loan on your house. Now, I wouldn't do that unless you had a sufficient IRA that if things go badly that you couldn't, that you need a backup. So, Dave Ramsey's a big fan. You don't want to go into retirement with any debt on your house. And for a lot of people, particularly middle and let's say lower middle and people who are somewhat financially challenged, that might be very good advice. On the other hand, so if you have a $200,000 IRA, is this going to be a good strategy if you have no after-tax savings? No, then that's going to get kind of risky. On the other hand, if you have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million IRA, you have a house where there's $500,000 or $1 million of equity, then the strategy that I'm going to recommend is going to make a lot more sense because you have some backup. I don't want you to do a home equity loan if there is no backup. But if you don't have backup, then forget the Roth IRA, just hold off on your Social Security. It's going to be really hard for people, and people have tried and tried and tried to convince me that in their special situation, it does make sense to take Social Security early. And the only way I'm really going to kind of agree with that and give you my blessing on that is if both you and your spouse have significantly reduced life expectancies.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. So we had another question from the morning session that I especially set aside. Richard asked, how are after-tax assets taxed when leaving them to your children?
Well, right now, right now, the after-tax assets get what is called a step up in basis. So why don't I go through what the step up in basis is and what the rules are? So let's say that you buy a stock for $1, okay? And it goes up to $10 and you sell it. You have a capital gain of $9. And let's just assume for discussion's sake that amount will be taxed at maybe 15% or whatever it is. But anyway, capital gain of $9. Example number 2, you buy a stock for $1 and you give it to anybody, but presumably to your child. And you say, here you go, son, here's a stock of XYZ. It costs me $1. And the son says, oh boy, I want to go out and, I want to sell the stock and I'm going to use the money to buy some cocaine or whatever they're going to do. I probably shouldn't say that. But anyway, they're going to use that money to do something that is responsible. So they cash it in. They still have to pay a $9 capital gain. Now, they might be at a lower rate than you, but if you give that to them while you are alive, they will have, it's called a carryover basis. They have to pay the tax on the gain, just like you did, but they might be in a lower tax rate. All right, now, example number 3, you own stock that you buy stock for $1, all right? It goes up to $10 and then you die. And now let's say you leave it to your son and your son sells it the day that you die for $10. Instead of having to pay a capital gain of $9, which would be what would happen if you gave your son the stock the day before you died, your son gets what's called a free step up in basis. So that their basis goes up to the fair market value on the day that you died, which is $10. They sell it for $10, then there is no capital gain. I'll tell you what's even more fun with the step up in basis rules is, for example, rental real estate. So let's say that you own some property that you've been renting out, whether it's residential or commercial or something like that, but we're talking business property, not personal. And you have depreciated it, down to the value of the land, even if it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you've got all the benefit of that depreciation. If you sell that, let's say the day before you die, you not only have capital gains, but you have something called depreciation recapture, which is taxed at ordinary rates, and it's bad. It's bad. But if you wait and you die with that property, then and let's say you leave it to your son gets a full step up in basis. Let's assume he decides to if he sells the property, and let's say theoretically he sells it for fair market value the day that you died, then there's no capital gain at all. So you got all the benefit of the depreciation, and nobody had to recapture or pay a gain on that. Example number 2, the child decides to keep the property. He can start depreciating it again at the fair market value on the date of death. So that is a terrific benefit, which is why a lot of people with highly appreciated highly appreciated, meaning the price went up, depreciated, meaning that they already took depreciation, many of those folks are in a situation where the tax will be murderous if they sell it. So their plan is to hold on to it until they die, get the step up in basis. All right, so that's all the good news. The bad news is I'm not convinced that the step up in basis rules are going to be around as long as you are. So here's what I sometimes fear, that you hang on to property that for investment reasons should be sold. So I'll give you the perfect example. Let's say that you worked for a company that you really believed in, all right, and you bought a lot of stock way back when for not a lot, and you were right, that stock went way up. And if you were to sell it tomorrow, there's going to be a big capital gain. And let's say that you had so much faith that you put a lot of your own resources into that stock that went up. So now that it's a significant part of your portfolio, okay? And you say, well, gee, I don't want to sell it because I don't want to have to pay the capital gain. So you hang on, that stock goes way down. If it's a high percentage of your portfolio, you're just going to get clobbered. And, Larry likes to talk about evidence-based investing and the studies have shown you're really much safer to have a well-diversified portfolio, even if you do have to sell some stock and pay a capital gain. And remember, by the way, the capital gain, A, it's only on the gain, so you're not paying tax on the whole thing. And B, right now, we have very favorable capital gains rates. So depending on your own income tax rates, by the way, for a lot of people, capital gains rates is 0 or 5%. So I would not count on the step up in basis when you are considering your portfolio, although I will admit that particularly for real estate, it might make sense. On the other hand, I had a client who desperately wanted to give away some beach property, the intent of which was to keep the money in the family, to keep the property in the family and not rent it out. And the other attorney said, oh, no, hang on, don't make the gift now, wait until you die so your child can get the step up in basis. Well, if the child isn't intending to sell it, at least for many, many years, and that property is likely to significantly appreciate between the time right now of the gift and when you die, you can get that appreciation out of your estate. It might make a lot of sense to do that gift now. And the younger you are, I would say, the more years you have of life expectancy, the more likely it is that they're going to repeal the step up in basis rules. Another characteristic long answer to a short question.